welcome to Be Empowered. This is a podcast in which we dive into the realities of healthcare, entrepreneurship, and always offer our opinion unfiltered, unapologetically, and always with a dose of empowerment. We're here to amplify voices, ours and yours, challenge the status quo, and explore what it truly means to thrive. So let's get into it. I'm Dr. Santoshi Balakota.
And I'm Dr. Shala Mokbel.
And today we'll be talking about the gender bias in medicine. So before we start this episode, Shala, I think it'd be interesting to talk about what our favorite thing, if there are any, about being a doctor or being a female doctor is. So for me, in general, I think I enjoy being a female physician because I get to take care of other women. I think historically there has been a gender bias throughout society, especially when it comes to medical care. I think there has not been so much in terms of research for conditions that affect women specifically. And medicine has historically been a male-driven field. So I really do enjoy being a woman in it and taking care of other women. How about yourself?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think in general, women are more sympathetic towards other people. I feel that part of being a woman in medicine is just that being perfectionist, basically. That kind of, maybe we can call it an OCD, but I feel that from my observation, women in general are more passionate about things, more passionate about patient care, and they really want to get it right, and they pay more attention to details. And that is my favorite thing, because I feel that if, for example, me as a woman wanting to choose a doctor, I do prefer a woman sometimes, because
Same.
I feel that I would get more sympathy from a woman doctor.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that comes from having to be better than, right? Our whole lives, you and me are both immigrants. You have to be better than the other person to get to where you are. And then you throw in being a woman into the mix in this field that has been historically male driven. And so I think that makes you more careful, makes you more OCD per se, pay more attention to the details. So I really agree. I think, being a woman in medicine is a very unique place to be. So I think, today we can talk a little bit about the gender bias there is in medicine, because just like any other field, medicine also has a lot of double standards that women face. And let's talk about some statistics. Women now make up about 50% of medical school students in the United States. That's from the AAMC from 2023. So when I saw that statistic, it's impressive. I had a lot of female colleagues in my medical school, but I didn't realize women now made up to 50% of the medical students. Did you know this, Shala?
No, I mean, my observation has been that there are more women in medical school and residency. For example, in my own residency, we had 7 neurologists training, but 4 of us were women and 3 of us were men. So I've seen that observation, but I didn't know the exact number, which is interesting because only 36% of active physicians are women. So there is a huge lag in overall representation of women.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think as we talk about this more, we'll come to see why exactly that is. But that is interesting that there's such a big drop off from 50% to 36%. I have a feeling, and again, we'll talk about this more. This has a lot to do with the medical system and the toxicity of medical culture, just not set up for women to thrive and survive, especially in leadership positions. In leadership positions, only about 18% of women actually hold those higher administrative positions, and only 25% of all department chair roles are women. So why is that? We have 50% of or half of the med school population being women. You have a drop off with people actively participating as physicians, and then a huge drop off when it comes to administrative positions. It's really disappointing when you look at those numbers.
Right, exactly. And I think, as you said, there are a lot of factors that play into this. Women are more responsible for things
Hmm.
at home, and they have to basically be a master at multitasking. You know, they have to be an
Hmm.
expert at multitasking. So I think some of it is that, some of it is the challenges that they face at home, and then the other part is that, which is very sad to me, but this has been my observation as well, is that women, unfortunately, have not been supportive of women. I feel that,
I agree with
especially
you.
in leadership, in the leadership world. I don't know what it is, but there is this microaggressions,
Hmm.
towards women, from women, and sometimes, yeah, we see it. We see the gender kind of bias from men, but what strikes me the most is that why women are not supportive of their women colleagues as much. Why we don't have each other's back as much, and that is crazy to me,
Hmm.
because especially in leadership, we have to, as women in leadership, we really have to support other women to become leaders. But then there is this kind of, I'm not sure what it is, some jealousy, or what is it that women in leadership have a little bit of microaggression toward other women leaders.
So I have a theory on this actually, because I've thought about it and I've experienced it. I'm sure you have throughout your career. I've talked to other women, female friends of mine who are not in medicine, and they express the same thing in their own, in their own profession, like be it law, be it other corporate stuff. A woman leader is always going to be less approachable than a man leader. And again, just by saying that, I might be reinforcing that stereotype, but I actually do think it's true. And I think it's because when you are used to fighting your way to the top, just like we talked about in the beginning, this culture is not set up for women. So once you get to that very high point, I think one, you're scared of other women taking your position. And two, you start acting a little bit more ruthless. You try to protect your position. You try to set yourself apart from other women so your male counterparts don't look at you like you're weak or less than. I don't know
That's
if
true.
that makes sense, but I think to me, that's what it is. I think once you're a woman leader, you try to act more like a man, and in doing that, I think you treat your other female counterparts like shit. I hate to say it, I'm sorry, but I think that's what ends up happening, because I've observed this in, like I said, some of my friends who are not in medicine as well. And it's really unfortunate because as women, I think, we should be helping each other. I try to help female residents and female fellows as much as I can myself. And I think it's up to our generation to break that cycle. But I've noticed that more so in the generation before us, where if you have an older woman in leadership, she will try to be your friend, but almost all the time will not have your best interest in mind, or she'll only be your friend up until the fact that you can be beneficial to her, right? So if you
Right.
ever say anything against her, you're done. That's been my experience anyway.
No, no, I agree. Women have to show strength to get to that position. You need to be strong to get to that point, but also you can be perceived as aggressive, and
Sure.
so it's very interesting that there's a fine line between being perceived as aggressive versus being strong.
Right. You can't win. You're
No.
either weak or you're a bitch. You're not anywhere in between, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it's very disheartening and disappointing, but unfortunately, this is the reality of women.
Y- Yep. And that leads to higher burnout rates because you're never doing enough. I think you're either doing less or too much. And because of the macro and microaggressions, both from your peers and people above and below you, it certainly leads to higher burnout rates. There's less appreciation for women. They're compensated less, as we said, and there's less chance for advancement. And you put all that together with the fact that now you also have to take care of your family. And women do experience a higher burnout rate. The Medscape survey in 2023 said that women experience burnout rates at about 56% compared to men about 41% when it comes to medicine.
Yeah, I can see that.
Definitely. So let's talk about some of the challenges faced by women, especially in the professional sense. We will also talk about work life balance in a separate podcast episode, just because I think, and I know Shala agrees, that work life balance in itself can be a whole long podcast. And we want to really give it the time that it deserves. So,
Yeah.
for this episode, we're going to focus a little bit more on the professional side of things, such as let's start with the gender pay gap. Women in medicine consistently earn less than men in nearly all specialties, which is incredibly disheartening to hear. Because we hear about the gender pay gap in every other job in the world, but you would think in medicine, where we're all doing the same thing, that we would all get paid equally.
Yeah, and that leads us to, one solution, that pay transparency.
Hmm.
Unless we achieve pay transparency in our jobs, we will not have a solution for the gender pay gap, So I'm a big proponent of pay transparency.
Yeah, me too. And I think I'm going to try to say this in the nicest way possible. We've been taught in med school to never talk about money. They look at you like you're someone who went into medicine for the wrong reasons if you talk about money, that you're just greedy, you're just trying to get rich. And the reality is, if those are the reasons you're trying to go into medicine, then this is not the career for you. There are better ways to become rich. But because it's such a taboo subject, we don't really talk about it. And so even now, when we're looking at new contracts to sign, we're not supposed to talk about it. You can't ask your colleague, hey, how much are you making? I mean, in my most recent academic position, when we had bonuses at the end of the year, we were told not to discuss with our colleagues what those bonuses are for. Why not? Why can't I share? There should be some amount of transparency. Otherwise, none of us are going to succeed in this, and I think it's fair to have pay transparency. And when there's no pay transparency, I think the people who are already at a disadvantage, in this case female physicians, suffer the most. And in fact, one study found that female physicians make about $2 million less over their entire careers compared to male physicians.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot of money to consider. Yeah, so I have experienced the same thing, that there are some colleagues that are very open and honest about their pay, and they want to share their pay. So I see them as very supportive colleagues, and fighting with us for pay transparency. But there are other colleagues that, you try so hard to get it out of them, and they're just kind of give vague answers and not comfortable with the
The
subject.
subject,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly, with the subject, which again, that is the solution. The solution is pay transparency. And I remember even when we were in residence, just as you said, um, we never we were never taught, negotiating our contracts, or even talking about bonuses. It was always this kind of vague, you know don't talk about money that much, because if you do, then you're not a team player, then you're not compassionate about this job, which again, it's wrong. I feel like you have to talk about money. Money is very important to talk about.
Yeah, and why not talk about money? Everyone talks about money. Money makes the world go round, right?
Right.
We're providing a service, we're getting paid for it, it's transactional. Again, I think a lot of people say medicine is a calling, which I do agree to a certain extent it is, but at the end of the day, it's a job. You're doing this job to make money so you can survive and your family can survive and you can hopefully retire one day. I don't see why not talk about money. And I think that transparency is incredibly important, because if there is no transparency, people are just going to sign whatever contract comes to them the first. How do you know how to evaluate whether a contract is a good one or a bad one unless there's some transparency, right? So I think this disproportionately affects women too, because we're not supposed to be um, confrontational. We're not supposed to be aggressive. So someone hands you a contract and it's for a good amount of money, probably more money than you've ever seen as a trainee. You're coming out of it, you're becoming an attending. And by the way, as a segue, I think definitely we can do another episode on how to evaluate a contract once you're in attending, when you go from residency to attendingship, because they're going to put all this money in front of you, more money than you've ever seen in your life. And you're just going to say, okay, and go with your first option because, again, there's no transparency.
Right.
Maybe you can ask some of your friends how much they're getting paid, but I didn't do that. Did you do that?
No, unfortunately, I didn't. I did not do
Yeah.
that, and um, I think it was a mistake.
Yeah.
Now I'm more open about it. I actually, whenever I talk to colleagues, I tell them what I get paid, um, to hopefully get them to say what they get paid, and so again, pay transparency. So this is the move towards pay transparency. We all have to change.
We do. And one interesting study I found that actually people were talking about on TikTok. And then also, I'm on TikTok for a totally different reason, but I saw this study come up a lot because a lot of people who post are female physicians or OB-GYNs or surgeons. And there was a systemic review, meta analysis done last year that showed that patient outcomes were actually much better when they were treated by female physicians or female surgeons, I'm sorry, as compared to male surgeons. I don't think they've done something comparable for like, neurology or internal medicine. I think that would be a little harder to do with surgery. At least you have outcomes that you can measure. But I thought that was a fascinating study because female surgeons and female physicians are still being underpaid. Meanwhile, you have all these studies, or at least this big one, which is a big meta analysis that showed that the results or the outcomes were not just comparable, but better compared to their male colleagues. So that's just a little something I wanted to throw in there because it also goes to show you that not only are we providing the service, but we're maybe doing even a better job. At the same time, we're still accepting less pay. So that needs to change.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you. It needs to change. And I think this is the right move because it's just talking about it. I think nobody talks about this. Nobody talks about pay transparency. And nobody, I mean, a lot of people talk about the gender gap, but I feel that
Hmm.
nobody provides solutions, which pay transparency is one solution. When we have these problems,
Hmm.
just saying that we have these problems is not enough. What is the solution, and how are we moving towards the solutions?
Exactly. And in addition to the pay transparency, another thing that we had talked about earlier in this episode was how little there was in term, or how low the number of female physicians were in terms of leadership. And we talked a little bit about how female leaders might not always help each other out, but why is that? And I think my theory was that there's so many barriers to advancement that once you get to that advanced role, you kind of want to protect it for yourself. You see other women as threat, perhaps. Again, I'm not speaking for everyone. This has just been my observation, and the audience's observation might be different. But I think it goes without saying, and it's very, very obvious that there are advancement barriers for women in medicine. We're underrepresented in leadership roles, including deans, department chairs, executives. There's also bias when it comes to hiring and promotions, as women are often viewed as less authoritative. Like you said, you're either soft or you're too hard. There's no in between. So, with all of that, I think there's less female leaders. And when there's less leaders that are female, there's going to be less advocacy for females in medicine, less advocacy for pay transparency for women in medicine. Um, and so that I think is a disservice to all of us, not just women, but all of us, because it affects how well you can perform your job as a physician.
Yeah, that's right. And when we talked about the pay gap and that women should ask or should talk about money, and I mean, everyone should talk about money.
Hmm.
It's not to say that if you talk about money, that means you have less empathy or you're not a team worker, team player, or you are not collegial. It has nothing to do with that. Just requesting um, or advocating for your value, it doesn't mean that you know you are not putting 100% into the job. It is not relevant. So because some people see it that way. Some people say, "Oh, okay, money is a priority for you." Well, money is a priority for everyone. Because
Yeah, that's not a
it
bad
is.
thing. Money
It's not
should
a
be a
bad thing.
priority.
Yeah, because that's how you survive. Money means you are providing for your kids. Money means that you are having a life that you deserve. So it's not that it shouldn't be a shame to talk about money.
Exactly. And look, nothing in this life is free, right? How much money did we spend to get to where we are right now? And that's not even including like the ERS applications, flying to do interviews, all of that. All of that costs money. So why shouldn't I expect to get some money in return so I can, one, pay back some of these loans, and two, support myself and my family so I, can retire at some point. And not even thinking about retirement, but I want to be able to send my kids to good schools. I want to be able to take vacations, and none of that. You're not going to get any of that just on good intention. Like, you do need money for that. So I do think we
Right.
we need to collectively talk about money, and not just that. I think just going back to the leadership piece. If you don't have women leaders, then you're not going to have the progress and the opportunities for women. There's not going to be the mentorships that women will need to support a career in medicine. And, obviously, men need this as well. But given that such a high rate of women start off in medicine to who finish in medicine, I think, and also women have unique things that we have to deal with that men might not have to deal with, fertility, pregnancy, maternity leave, all that stuff. So I think we need mentorship programs for women, but that's not going to happen if you have no female leaders or such few female leaders, and the ones who are there who don't even want to help. That's going to suffer.
Mm.
Again, you mentioned transparency to address wage gaps. We definitely need to do that. We DEI initiatives, right now, the way
Yeah.
things are currently, who knows? But definitely DEI also benefits women, and I think it's kind of a shame, what's happening to all of that. So I think, these are all a few things we need in place. We need more women leaders. We need pay transparency. We need these mentorship programs. And more than anything, we need people to start talking about these issues because they're issues.
And so maybe we can share some stories, if from our experiences with the audience. Have you had any situations where you were a subject of kind of gender bias?
Yeah, I mean, to be very honest with you, I know you're small too. I'm like 5 feet tall. I'm a very small
Yeah,
woman. I'm
me
a
too. I'm
brown woman.
5'1". Yeah. Yeah, me too.
uh,
I'm very short
I'm a very
also.
small woman.
Yeah, me
I'm a
too.
brown woman, but there's a lot of Indian people in medicine, so I can't say that's a big deal. But I'm a very small, petite brown woman, and I think because of that, people don't often take me seriously. I mean, they do now, but when I was training, and the only reason I say they do now is because I feel like I finally found my voice. But it took me going through a whole lot of crap for me to get to this point. When I was in medical school, when I was in training, I had actually got a lot of, like, I mean, I won't even say, I mean, maybe harassment is the right word. A lot of patients would not take me seriously. I trained in the South. So a lot of the times I think they would think I was like the phlebotomist, the nurse, the food service person, basically anyone but the doctor, right? Like, you've probably been here, Shala. This isn't a unique experience, but how many times have you sat and talked to a patient and then they look at you and go, "Oh, am I going to see the doctor?"
Yeah. Yeah,
All the
definitely.
time,
I had that.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So that experience has happened. Sorry to interrupt you, but
no, that's
I've
fine.
also had the opposite from my own colleagues. I've had nurses be very mean to me when I was in training, say some not so nice things. I have had attendings say some things that were inappropriate. I'm not going to go into detail, but I know a lot of women have gone through this. And then ultimately, I've also dealt with female leaders who I don't think were supportive, who I initially approached with good intention, but it was not it wasn't reciprocated. I'm sorry, in the manner that I was hoping it would. So yes, I have gone through all of that. How about yourself?
Yeah, so part of my training was at the Veterans Affair.
Oh my
And
God.
so, yeah,
Yes.
so there were these patients that no matter how many times I say, "Hey, I'm your doctor," and they'll be like, "Oh, you're the nurse?" You know, it's the
Yeah.
same patient. Sometimes it's the same patient. You have to repeat it every day when I go around there. And my attending was very nice, this very nice man, and he would say, "This is your doctor," and then he says, "Oh, and the other part is when they talk, they look at the
Hmm.
man, you know, I'm
Yeah.
talking to them. I'm addressing their concerns. I'm the one who telling them what they have and what the results show. But then when they talk back, they just turn to the man, to the attending, or basically
Hmm.
to the man, responding to them. Even if it's a male nurse standing there and I'm the doctor, when they respond back, they respond to the male, which was very frustrating. But I guess because I knew this was not malicious, it's just a cultural thing, right? Um, so that's why I always thought that we just have to talk about it and provide solutions how to fix it.
Hmm.
I wasn't gonna attack them and tell them, hey, like I'm the doctor, you need to just kind of look at me to talk. I never did that. But it was always a in my mind that why why they're not addressing me. And I to this day I sometimes have that. To this day sometimes I do a lot of telemedicine and I try to talk to the attending male doctors, to raise my concerns, and I feel that sometimes I'm not taken seriously, just because I'm a woman. So definitely those
Right.
concerns. And even again, so a lot of these factors happen or situations happen during residency, but it didn't end even when I became an attending.
Yeah, definitely. And the double-edged sword, like you brought up earlier, just to circle back to it. If you do stand your ground and you are firm with what you're saying, then they'll tell you that your tone is an issue.
Yes,
And it's
exactly.
my tone is my tone. Like, what the heck do you want me to do?
Oh
It's
yeah,
so
definitely.
ridiculous. It's, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I don't know. And I think, these are all good places for us to maybe pause and come back for our next episode where we'll focus more on work-life balance and family responsibilities. I think that is a big one. I mean, it's a big one for all physicians, but I think for women especially, it's tough. And I know you, Shala, are a mom. I'm not yet, but I honestly, I don't know how you guys have done it, especially during residency and fellowship, because this lifestyle, especially the toxicity and misogyny of training, and I'll just say that I might piss people off by saying that, but it's a very male centered, toxic work culture. I personally didn't know too many people having children in residency. I saw a lot of my male colleagues, stay at home wives or wives with other non medical jobs, having kids. But I didn't see a lot of my female physician colleagues do it. And, through a lot of personal things I've been through recently, I was reading up a lot on female physicians and fertility. And apparently, 1 in 4 female physician deals with infertility, which is something I didn't know. So I think that that'll be a good episode because we'll really, really get into it. And hopefully, we'll have some good discussion around it.
Yeah, I think this might be uh we probably need maybe two more episodes about women in
We
medicine,
could talk
honestly.
about this forever.
There is a lot to talk about,
So
exactly.
much.
But we'll end with this episode. Thanks for tuning in to Be Empowered, the podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review and rating, and share with someone who needs to hear this. Stay strong, stay empowered, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.